My name is Joe Gaddam from Social Vision, and tonight we've invited professionals from around the city to come and talk about what multiple and complex disadvantage looks like to them, why people are currently homeless in the city, and what they would do if they had a kind of completely blank canvas, no economic, political interference, rip up the rule books, do whatever you want. What would you do to change outcomes for those people? So as part of this project, we wanted to collaborate with different organisations from around the city. We spoke to Good Organisation and we found out that they were doing a creative project, and we decided to marry the two together. So the exhibition that people are seeing tonight is work that's been done by people who've experienced homelessness. And what we wanted to do was create some creativity, but also allow people, we wanted to spark some interest and kind of spark some conversation. So we've got people here tonight with lived experience who are actually talking through their work and what it means to them.
At the end of the day, the people who have experienced homelessness are just humans. They're intelligent humans, they're humans that have a lot to say, a lot of compassion, a lot of empathy because they've been through things that possibly most people cannot imagine. And they're here and they've put their hearts really onto these posters to give you a message about wanting to be accepted really. Because to learn about homelessness, if you haven't ever experienced it before, in any sense of the word, we firstly need to listen to people who have experienced homelessness.
The other key thing to us is that everybody intermingles, and there's no obvious people with lived experience, and we wanted to kind of make sure that we're not professionals over here and people with lived experience over here. We want everybody in the same room together, exploring, debating, sometimes disagreeing on what the right outcomes are for people with multiple and complex disadvantage.
Why do you feel there is homelessness in York?
As we know, anybody can be homeless, everybody has different circumstances, everybody's different. One thing that crops to mind could be a relationship breakup. It could be that someone lives with someone and then that the relationship breaks up and they don't have anywhere to go. It could be that someone's got an addiction and it's just meant that they haven't been able, which is an illness as we know, that has meant that they can't do their job anymore and then they haven't been able to pay for their flat. These are just two reasons of vast melting pot of reasons, I think.
Substance abuse is obviously a major contributing factor in why homelessness occurs in York, and it also prevents people getting off the streets because they're stuck in this loop of perpetrating behaviours and staying on the streets in order to get access to substances.
Well, I think everyone's got their own story, don't they? Everyone's got their own reason why they've become homeless.
We've got guys that I've spoken to who are homeless because they've lost their jobs. You get guys who are homeless because they couldn't get housing through the council. You get guys who have got mental health issues, people who have got drug addiction problems, ex-convicts. The list is pretty endless.
Everything from family, their sort of experience, the sort of skills that have been developed, education, housing crisis, politics, you name it. It's such a complex.
It is massive, isn't it?
Homelessness in York caused by anything from financial issues, drugs, alcohol. I think the biggest problem is trying to narrow that down.
There's loads of big answers around housing and why housing is so expensive and why there isn't council housing being built. And then there's loads of individual answers about the support that people need with mental health and substance misuse and probation and things like that. So there isn't really a simple answer to that question.
There's a whole host of reasons that people find themselves in a position where they don't have their own homes, and it ends up in this vicious cycle that people really, really struggle to break, and there's not the support there to help break those cycles and get people back integrated into wider society.
There's no help out there now. You think the system's going to help you, but it's not.
I agree with all that, but also the lack of housing stock in York. I mean, not just York, but right through the country. The lack of housing stock and the inability of the councils to be able to purchase and build new properties. York's a big tourist place, it's all glitz and glamour, and there's actually people who support that tourist industry who are probably living in cars or living on people's sofas.
York's a really expensive place. A lot of people find themselves hard up money-wise. If you get into debt or financial difficulty, it's hard to then find accommodation.
High rents and low wages
Yeah, basically, it is really. And I think that the housing crisis, that they're far, far too expensive. I mean, we've got flats upon flats, but people are buying them and living in London, not in York.
So many empty places.
Oh, there's loads.
Or holiday lets. So they're making money for somebody.
And
the people who service them.
That's right, and the rents are far, far too much.
I certainly think the housing's a big part of it, because often is the case that people just can't find the kind of housing to keep it going, and if something happens while they're already in a tenancy and then they lose that, then it can be really hard to kind of get back onto that ladder and find somewhere to live. So I think that's probably the main cause is just the difficulty in finding housing and kind of maintaining a tenancy if it kind of all goes a bit south.
We're all one paycheck away from being homeless. I think 0-hour contracts should be banned, because that's obviously you're working and then you know you're not going to work, so you're not getting the hours in a week. And I think mental health needs to be one of the biggest factors at the moment.
Well, suffering poor mental health, we've experienced people that, suffer poor mental health and maybe experiencing autism, where they haven't got the coping mechanisms to feel included in society. Sometimes there's a breakdown there.
And I think a lot of people have a lot going on in their lives. Mental health can be bad. I've struggled with that, and then if that's going on, it can be hard to maintain the other things. Sometimes lack of mental health provision can make things worse.
Yeah, certainly I hear from a lot of the people I work with that mental health is a real struggle in terms of them finding some support around that area, and that's kind of led them to the place where they're at, because they just can't get that support that they need to kind of bring them out of that place of being homeless and kind of the effect their mental health has on that.
Some of the people who have got somewhere to live, but there's no mental health backup.
No.
So I know quite a few homeless people who have been put into the store, but they've got no, everyday life, so they end up coming back on the streets and begging because they want to have that fix, or they want a drink, or just a little bit of money to treat themselves with, but they've got somewhere to live, but it's not ideal.
And if they're lonely and isolated and have no support from anybody, it can be really hard to kind of get off that place and move to somewhere more positive.
Yeah, definitely. I think that community is a big part of homelessness in York.
In York, particularly, I think we don't have many, we have a lot of services working hard, but people might end up on the streets because places are quite full, to the brims, like hostels and things like this, so that might take them to the streets. But homeless could be sofa surfing, which, quite a lot of people have experienced. I don't think they really realise that is being homeless. If you don't have your own home or live somewhere, no fixed abode, I guess.
And if you've been on the streets a very long time, it's very difficult to get back into society.
Yeah.
And I think
it's a big jump.
I think we need to be a bit more lenient with them, because it's a huge thing to be on the streets for 10 years, to expect somebody to live in a room, in a bed. I know plenty of homeless people who sleep on the floor still, because they don't sleep in a bed because they're not used to it, and that's what's lacking.
With an unlimited budget and without any political constraints, how would you end homelessness in York?
I think outreach is quite an important factor, because certainly the role that I've had has opened my eyes to how many people sort of slip through services simply because services have staff who are located on a site, and so they can't sort of catch up with people in the city. It's sort of on an ad hoc basis.
You could really have a really good project to get people off the streets, but then you could spend the money on drugs, rehabilitation, alcohol rehabilitation. Mental health would be at the top for me. I think it would have to be in one big complex, and then after maybe 6 months to a year, then we can go out
with the support.
With the support. The support's going to have to be there for a good number of years, not for a couple of weeks.
So you need flexibility. A lot of flexibility. And that costs a lot of money.
I would take profit out of housing, and everybody just has to have a house, because that's where you flourish, bring up your family, grow, develop, and achieve the ability to become part of the community. But while profit is in housing, the basic provision isn't being provided.
Guarantee that everyone in this country receives a minimum amount of money a year that will make sure they can have a home, feed themselves, and let the rest of their lives build from that. It's a model that's been tried in different places around the world. It's a model that's proven to be viable, and we're in a first world country where we have the luxury of being able to do it.
There needs to be a cap on buildings like this, for instance. There needs to be people realising that buildings need to be used to house people, whether it's temporarily or permanently. There needs to be more affordable housing and more social housing.
Anybody can get a home, but actually keeping that home is very hard, even for people who are working. So I think it would have to be a complex.
It's not an overnight.
It's not an overnight. So you'd have a complex where you go through the system, and at the end of it, then you could have somewhere to live. Because if you're being shown how to do all these basic things,
day-to-day stuff,
day-to-day stuff, from shopping to cooking to cleaning, education. There's going to be a limit, wouldn't it?
Community's a big part of it, and I certainly feel that if I had kind of unlimited budget and unlimited kind of options of trying to end homelessness in York, I think I'd put a lot of time and investment and money into just building communities where people can be a bit more honest and open with one another, and it's not so singular focused, but actually there's that kind of I guess ease of being able to share and feeling comfortable in living in a community. I think we've lost that a little bit.
People looking after each other.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I think maybe as a society we need to sort of examine what having a home is. There's this narrative we've fed of the nuclear family, mum, dad, 2 kids, and that's what everyone sort of aspires to have. But there's so many studies out there that show the benefits of intergenerational living and co-housing.
We need a magic money tree.
We do. So come on, let's get the money.